This is the 21st century that we have basically walked off into, that a lot of your elderly people, a lot of your old people, a lot of your senior citizen people don't have no idea of the relevance of how this particular subject that we're fixing to talk about has in fact become front and center in reality of today. Especially whenever you get to going back into some of these backwoods country settings type urban communities. And you go back into these country areas where you got the vast majority of the people that's basically a bedroom community. These people hadn't been on top of the game towards understanding the advancements of technology. And it's not because they didn't think that it was real, it's just that they was too relaxed in trying to jump on board with this particular technology. The subject that they're fixing to talk about, my friends, is just about as real as walking outside and being either faced with sunlight or darkness or cold or hot or rain or dryness. Because what they're fixing to discuss is in fact very, very, very real whenever it comes to cyber attacks and ransomware, etc., 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 that's now been going on throughout the world, give or take, for I guess the past 7, 8, 10 years. And we've seen little bits and pieces of it towards this company being hacked, and this industry being hacked, and this government being hacked, and these people being hacked. But today we're seeing more and more of this. This particular subject that they're talking about today is called the perfect weapon. The perfect weapon. Not tool, not a teaching aid, but a weapon. In other words, we have designed something pertaining to the beast that foul play has become just about as acceptable in playing with the beast as it is good play. And anytime you have malice, this much maliceness going on, people can be very, very hurt. And we're seeing this on a day-to-day basis of industries that are folding, companies that are becoming bankrupt, almost at the point of war. Literal war. But please listen to this very, very carefully, because it's a part of our lives. And if you don't accept it, kind of like accepting the fact that we have now a space shuttle that goes around in the sky, way up in space, the fact that accepting that Armstrong really did land on the moon, accepting the fact that we really do have a microscopic disease out there called COVID-19, coronavirus, that is literally killing a lot of people. People that don't have the right DNA makeup, people that don't have the right built up humane defense system in their bodies, to the point that their system has been broken down. These things are real. And it's difficult to convince a bunch of people that has been bought into a lie of not believing in these things versus convincing people that they have. So I think that this is essential 2 days before the actual 2020 presidential election of the free world. So please listen to what they have to say.
So your book, the documentary, fantastic. It's about cyber warfare, and I feel like this election that we're about to have is a battle in this war. And I would hesitate to even say this is the future of warfare, cyber warfare. I feel like it's actually the present of warfare.
Exactly.
And people haven't caught on to that yet. Would you agree with that assessment?
Oh, it's definitely the present. And it's so far, Bill, we've been lucky. It's been, instead of warfare, it's been sort of low level, daily, constant conflict. But everybody's been really careful, even the Russians, not to take it right up to that notch that would lead to a military conflict. And that's what makes the next few days so really fascinating, because as we describe it, as John Maggio's laid out so well as the director of the documentary, what happens over the next week, whether the Russians feel like they've been beaten back by U.S. Cyber Command, by all of the publicity, or whether or not they feel like they can go mess with the election, and the Iranians too, may well decide what's going on, and it may well decide whether Donald Trump can stand up and say, oh, there's been foreign interference. We need to stop and think about where these electors came from.
Well, you mentioned the Iranians. It's interesting. I read a story about the Proud Boys, which, as we mentioned here earlier, they're kind of a paramilitary group that work for Trump. And there was some stuff attributed to them online. And then it turned out, or it was said, that this was the Iranians posing as the Proud Boys. Now, we've seen this before. People try to get people on the other side excited. They're trying to sow chaos and divisiveness. So it wasn't really the Proud Boys posting that. It was the Iranians. And then I read it was possibly the Russians posing as the Iranians, posing as the Proud Boys. So we're living in this hall of mirrors age where we don't know who is doing what or where it's coming from. How do we counter that?
Well, as Donald Trump famously said 4 years ago, it could have been a 400-pound guy sitting at the edge of his bed, right? In this particular case, U.S. intelligence pretty quickly tracked down that these emails were coming from the Iranians. And did you read any of the emails?
Yeah.
I mean, they read a little bit like the scriptwriters from Borat had, been writing emails out there. They weren't the smoothest thing that was ever done. They routed them through Saudi Arabia and through Estonia, and it got delivered to a few hundred people in Florida and Alaska, and maybe a few others. That was pretty amateur work. What worries me more out of this, Bill, is some other things we've seen happen in the past 2 weeks. The Russians moved their A-team, the group that broke into all of the American utilities, the power grid. They haven't turned off the power yet. They know that would be a step too far, but they're beginning to focus on state and local government. So far, they haven't touched the election infrastructure. Maybe they will next week. Maybe they just did it to psych us out. But as you say, it's a hall of mirrors.
And really nothing is safe. I mean, we saw this with corporations. Well, remember the Sony hack was, I think it was 2014, because,
right.
They put out a Seth Rogen's movie, and North Korea didn't like it. And then everybody's emails, and we found out about what was going on with the executives at Sony. And Sheldon Adelson got hacked because they didn't like something he said. I didn't like it either, but it's, the city of Baltimore got it. Now we're seeing ransomware. We're seeing hospitals are being threatened and targeted because of the pandemic, and these hackers know, well, they can't afford to have their stuff shut down right now. They can't afford to have their technology locked up. There is no defense, really. It's a little like, I feel like when they started stealing music and everybody panicked, and then everybody just went, we can't stop this.
See what I'm saying about we have created a method of communication that is uncontrollable. It's turned out to be a Wild Wild West show, to where any and everything happens. And whenever you create this, you create an environment of danger. danger in so many different ways that it's not even funny. It's kind of like walking into the Wizard of Oz, not knowing who's in behind the curtain. Who's the puppet master? Who's the one that's doing these things? Is it the Americans doing it to the Americans? Is it the Russians playing out of being being the Iranians or the North Koreans, and then it's coming back at us towards thinking that it's someone else? I mean, whenever you're dealing with something that has this much uncertainty about it, whenever you're dealing with something that is this unwell behaved, I'm going to repeat that, unwell behaved. And the reason why it's unwell behaved is because it's not mandated of running on some sort of a law platform. Right now it's running on a lawless platform. And by running on a lawless platform, if I had the ingenuity skills, I could pretend that I was a judge, that I was a federal judge, and that I had put out an order towards releasing 7 prisoners in a particular jail, and I wanted it done immediately. Well, if the jail attendant, the warden, didn't know no better and he was gullible, the next thing you know, he's done let out 7 prisoners thinking that it was mandated by the order of a federal judge. That's just one illustration, one example that I could give of how chaotic that this all could unravel just within the next few days. Even FBI has recently put out a statement saying that our hospitals has been under attack because of the coronavirus, knowing the circumstances that we're going through here in the homeland, and people are taking advantage of that towards creating more anxiety. This is the perfect weapon, not the tool, but the weapon. And I've said all along, it's just like a gun. A gun can either be a tool or a gun can be a weapon. So the same thing with computers. Computers can either be a tool that can be an advancement learning tool to where people can do leaps and bounds of things on the computer that you never would think that you could ever do in a classroom or going before a committee or whatever. You can do leaps and bounds of doing good, or you can do leaps and bounds of doing bad. And that's where we are right now, folks. We are at that crossroad. And I realize that a lot of people in your country settings don't either understand this or haven't been bought into this, but this is just as real as walking outside not knowing the elements until you walk outside, unless you got windows and you got TV and you know whether or not it's raining or it's sunshine. But this is just as real as walking outside experiencing the elements that you have to experience for the first time that you walk outside. In other words, this is reality now. This is reality. This has become a form of our life. And this is the part that Jesus predicted that would come about in the last days. And this is the part that I continue to keep saying that it's not happening, pertaining to strengthening the ode. It talks very, very clearly to the 7 churches about he who is ready to die, to strengthen those things that are ready to die. We have to strengthen our elderly, our senior citizens, as well as our old institutions in making sure that they are still strong and standing. If we don't, this whole thing could collapse. And if it ever collapsed, it would be like a dominoes effect. It would not only affect the economy and the people over here in America, but it could very well affect the people all over the world. We have reached a pivotal moment, a climaxing moment here in America pertaining to cyber ransomware and crazy stuff going on with the computers to the point that it has become reckless, it has become careless, and it has become dangerous. And if we don't watch, something like this could very well sneak up and bite all of us worser than 9/11 and worser than the coronavirus. And you might say, how in the world could something like this be more dangerous than a microscopic germ? There is thousands of ways that this could be dangerous. It could be dangerous in driving people off the edge. It could be dangerous towards people losing their identity, losing all their income that they thought that was in their bank accounts. It could be dangerous in so many different ways that it wouldn't even match what we've seen right now with the coronavirus. That lethal and put into the wrong hands. You know, we watch scientific movies all the time, you know, where this one has invalidated that one and that one's invalidated this one, and I don't know if it was, I've forgotten now the name of the movie, where a bunch of terrorists has taken over a nuclear bomb and they was threatening to blow up I think it was New York City or something like that. That's the way we need to approach this. Because if the wrong people get this information and use it against us, it could absolutely be lethal in what that they could do or what that they could convince us that they could do. What that they could convince us that they could do. And if the truth be known, there's probably nuclear codes that have already been dispersed out into the world that various countries already have access to. And I don't mean to be alarming people towards frightening people. I'm not a fear monger. I don't want to be a fear monger because I've always preached a message of solitude, of peace, and utopia. But folks, people need to wake up. We are no longer living in the 20th century, back in the smokestack era, whenever we was making pajamas and being number one in society towards the leading manufacturers of the world. We are no longer that society.
We just have to give it away. We have to go to streaming or whatever, and musicians make nothing, really, unless they tour. Because you just can't stop it. We don't know how to do that. Is that correct?
Part of it is correct, and part of it we're learning how to stop. So take a look at some of the hacks you mentioned. Sony was one of the most interesting, and in the documentary, Seth Rogen sort of takes you through this as the victim. But that was a geopolitical hack. They didn't get hacked because somebody wanted to get money out of Sony. They got hacked by the North Koreans because the North Koreans wanted to stop a movie that envisioned the assassination of Kim Jong-un. Seemed pretty funny in Hollywood, didn't seem so funny to the North Koreans. And Sony was wide open. It took the North Koreans, the North Koreans, Bill, are not exactly the top of the game here, just days to break into Sony. And while you mentioned that they released emails, and they did, the most interesting thing is they melted down about 70% of Sony's computer systems.
So you're saying that Sony could not be hacked today? I bet you
I'm not saying they couldn't be hacked today. I'm saying it was no effort in 2014. Okay.
Right. All right.
The Sands Casino, which was Sheldon Adelson's casino, why were they hacked? Because Adelson had suggested in a talk at the university that we drop a nuclear weapon in the Iranian desert and show the Iranians a lesson. And they said, desert, guy's got a casino, be real shame, right? So those were two where I think we probably could have protected against it. The harder question is the disinformation issues and the question of whether or not you can protect something as broad as the election infrastructure next week. I'm not that worried about the voting machines, but the registration systems. Did you see what happened when the governor of Florida went to go vote last Monday? It turned out some hacker had gotten in and changed his registration from Tallahassee to West Palm Beach. Now, if he could do it,
Right.
how hard can that be?
That's what I'm saying. I feel like we're always fighting the last war. I feel like if you have this technology, if you have hackers, if you can do this, why wouldn't you? You mentioned in the book, and it's in the documentary, that we started this with Stuxnet in 2007. We were the first ones. We wanted to cripple the Iranian nuclear facilities. We did it with a hack, just as if we had sent B-1 bombers. It had the exact same effect. And
that's right.
That's what I mean about the last war. Aircraft carriers are fax machines. That's not where it is anymore.
That's absolutely right. And yet we're spending far more on the aircraft carriers, the airplanes and all that than we are on the cyber weapons. The Stuxnet hack, which was codenamed Olympic Games, was really fascinating because on the one hand, we were able to go cripple the Iranian program for maybe a year or so. The United States was able to go do that. On the other hand, it legitimized this form of conflict. And as President Obama warned his staff in the Situation Room as he was approving some of these, sooner or later, every country that wants to hack us anyway is going to say the Americans are doing it. Why can't we?
Right. All right, David. Great work. Great doc. Thank you for your work.
Thanks very much.
On.
Thanks for having me.
Now it's time for new rules, everybody. New rules. Okay.
In other words, we could possibly be beat at our own game. A game of no rules, no regulations. That could be devastating for all of us. Absolutely devastating.
I know
Lots of
all the
things
different
shouldn't
steps
have
along
happened.
the way that he's going to try to steal it. That's why it is so important for everybody to vote. And I won my first election by 312 votes. You know,
Right.
very
You had
well.
recounts, right?
I had a recount. I didn't get there till July, and I won the recount actually in January, but they did legal stuff to keep me out. But if it weren't for those 312 votes, we wouldn't have the Affordable Care Act because I was the 60th vote. So this is what this was. This is what this was about. This was, I want your audience to go to joebiden.com/call because I know everybody tells me I'm so nervous. I can't wait till do something. And you call there, they will give you people in battleground states. If you live in LA, they won't give you somebody across the street. And listen, you can ignore your family. You can do that. Here's you don't have to cook meals for them. Scientific proof, a 7-year-old can use a microwave oven, and it's scientifically been proven that a 7-year-old can teach a 4-year-old to use a microwave oven. So, you guys,
What does that have to do with Biden getting?
you don't have children. You
No,
don't
I
have
do
children,
not
and
have
happily so. I know. And that's the right
Let's
choice
not,
for you.
we're gonna have to fight about that.
No, we're not fighting.
Okay, all right.
What I'm saying
You
is,
seem hostile about that. You do not have children, and happily so. Yeah, and you do. That's great. We're different people.
Bill,
Yeah.
I'm so happy you don't have children because you don't want to have children. I think that's
I'm so
great.
happy too.
Here's what that meant. Yes, you should be. Here's what that
We're both
joke
so
means.
happy. Yeah.
Here's what the joke means.
Okay.
When you're a parent, you often have to prepare food for kids. But if you're lazy about it, you can put it in the microwave.
Oh, I
oven.
see.
And a 7-year-old knows how to do that. And I'm saying a scientific fact, which it really isn't. But we all know it is. And then the scientific fact, I went even further with the joke, and you know this, that's scientifically proven that a 7-year-old can teach a 4-year-old. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
But that's not what we want to talk about. I know you want to talk about
is it
Kavanaugh.
true that kids say the darndest things? Is that I've heard that often,
They're
but
so friggin' cute. And by the way, I did take an insult from the I did marry Franny immediately after her water broke. That's also a joke. If anyone should not like that joke, it should be it's Franny or my kids. Let's click. We got a little time left. Let's click.
Let's get on to the important. I mean, what's even more important than kids and microwaves is the Senate. How about that for a segue? The Senate.
The Senate.
I mean,
absolutely.
Your old place of business,
absolutely,
where you used to work.
If Biden wins and doesn't have the Senate,
it's pointless.
Mitch McConnell will stop everything.
Right.
He filibustered more appointees of Obama's than had been filibustered in the entire previous history of the United States.
Right.
And believe me, we don't want him to be the majority. He's not as charming as he looks. So we have to.
You see, and there's other dangers to throw into the equation pertaining to our system being broken. If there's certain people that become elected or not elected, it's almost a guarantee that nothing is going to be taken care of upstairs pertaining to the White House. Whenever you have such of a stalemate of different circumstances that can go on, you have an environment of a perfect storm that can lead into the perfect weapon that could cause chaos like we've never, ever experienced up onto this planet. You know, it's the small fox that can spoil the winery or the vineyard pertaining to the grapes, because it's the small fox that can weave himself in and out and chew and gnaw on this vine and chew and gnaw on that vine, and the next thing you know, the whole vineyard has already died. Everything has died because of the small fox. A lot of times it's not the big nuclear bomb that we should be concerned about, but it should be the smaller things, the little things that are creeping in that is causing this type of toxic environment for not just the Americans, but for the world. This is the part that we have to set down and pay very, very close attention to. I mean, we can laugh, we can humor one another, we can have fun at doing this and fun at doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that to some extent, to some degree. There's nothing wrong with humor. As long as it's put in the right hands at the right time. I think even the Bible talks about a good cheerful laugh is better than a dose of medicine, if it's the right laugh at the right time. Right now is not the right time to be laughing. We've got red flags going up everywhere. We've got red lights blinking everywhere pertaining to what is actually going on that could cripple the American way of life. Cripple us. And I'm just not talking about crippling us as far as going into a deep, dark depression, kind of like what happened in 1929, whenever all the banks failed and you had people jumping out of windows. I'm not talking about that. That's just part of it. What I'm talking about is people literally losing their minds. People that can't handle this type of pressure. People that don't know when the next meal is going to be coming to their table. People that don't know if they're going to be evicted or if they get sick, if they can go down here to healthcare first clinic and be seen as a regular citizen. I mean, the other day I went in there because of a cat bite, and I thought that I was going to have to be out like twice up to almost 3 times the amount of money just to be able for a doctor to see me in one of those quick care clinics than my normal insurance card requires for me to pay. And I looked at the woman, I said, woman, I've done already been in here before, and y'all didn't require for that kind of money. I said, my card tells me that even at the extent of me going through specialty counseling, a special doctor, an eye doctor, or ear doctor, or a diabetes doctor, I don't have to pay no more than $35 according to my card, according to my plan of wherever that I'm at in whatever state that I'm at. She finally backed up and realized that I owed her $1.26. She goes, can you pay me $36.26? I said, yes, ma'am, I'll do that. But now, if I was ignorant of what my card says, and I went in there, she could have very well hustled me for another $40, $50, $60 beyond what I was actually supposed to have paid. So in today's society, you have to be careful in every perspective, regardless whether it's monetary, regardless whether it's, I'm quarantining myself the best that I know to do because I've walked into a clinic that has known COVID in that clinic. So I'm staying away from the general public as much as I can. I'm not going to festivities right now. I'm just taking an extra precaution just in case. Whenever I went into the clinic, naturally, I had my mask on. But sometimes you have to not purposely be exposed to this disease or this germ, but sometimes you have to, sometimes there's no alternative other than to be exposed to people that's been exposed that could actually expose you. So far, I've not had no symptoms. I've not had no fever. I've not had any sore throat. I've not had no wheezing or any of the above. I feel like that I'm fine. Of course, that could change because the way that the disease bounces around and changes. The point that I'm wanting to say is this. We're living in very, very perilous, uncertain times right now, such as times that I don't think at the age of 59 that I have ever seen. I realized that it got dangerous. It got a little hairy whenever the Oklahoma incident happened out in Oklahoma in, I believe, 1995. I think that's correct. I may have my years a little wrong. I know it got hairy during 9/11 with people being uncertainty. But it has sure enough gotten hairy in 2020 with the coronavirus, and now we're staring down the barrels of all this other stuff. People needs to pay more attention to their surroundings. They need to pay more attention to world events. I realize out of sight, out of mind, a lot of times that's the best way to go whenever it comes to keeping your sanity. But sometimes whenever something this big and this dynamic is pushing its way this fast and furious into reality, you really don't have no choice other than to accept reality towards the format that reality is pushing itself off into, pertaining to cyberspace, pertaining to hacking, pertaining to malware, and all this other stuff that now we have to be on our toes about. Please, coming from the Windmill Ministries, be cautious in what you put out there. Cover your tracks. Don't allow for your children, don't hand them a laptop and say, here you go, do as you will. Because it's no longer a Pac-Man game. It's no longer a Pac-Man game. You know, back whenever my parents was parents and we was kids and we was just being introduced to the technology of Pac-Man, that was a babysitter on top of a babysitter towards, wow, just give them a Pac-Man game and let them go at it. There was nothing wrong with Pac-Man. If anything, it helped your eye and hand coordination, your finger coordination. It helped your thinking to be able to think quick and fast. And other games like that. That's not bloody and gory. But in today's society, we're no longer dealing with the Pac-Man society. We're dealing with a society today to where at any given time I can take my phone and mash porn or Google porn or X-rated girls or nudity, and that's the first thing that will come up on the internet is a bunch of porn or a bunch of nudity. And if I can do it at the age of 59, I'm pretty sure that a 7, a 8, a 9, a 10, a 12-year-old can do it at their age if they are exposed to a laptop that has an internet service hooked onto it, a wireless service hooked onto it, a telephone. Not counting all the gory and the junk movies that people can watch, that in and of itself can brainwash the individual. We are living in very, very perilous, sick times right now. And parents and the adults need to pay close attention to what's going on, because it could actually be to our Achilles heel. We think it was a gift. Well, so did Troy whenever they got their gift. They thought it was a gift. The Trojan horse. And I'm just afraid that could very well be where all this is leading with the 21st century technology, is that it is turning out to be our Trojan horse. There's no doubt we can do things on the internet that we couldn't even begin to fathom and do by getting out here and doing it on paper and doing it the old-fashioned way, towards controlling mobs or controlling mass media or controlling cities or controlling industries that's doing various things. And those are all good things to be able to do that with. But what if you was to use it as a weapon? What if you was shutting down stuff that shouldn't be shut down? What if you was holding people hostage? What if you was blackmailing people because you had access of being able to cripple their system? This is where we're at, folks. This is where we're at in the 21st century. And if we don't wake up to it, it could very well come back and haunt not just us, but it could haunt our children and our children's children. And they're going to look up to us. And they're going to look to us one day and say, how come y'all let this get out of hand? How come y'all created this monster and now the monster has turned on its maker? In this 2020 election, I pray to God that people will use common sense and that they will not cheat the system towards wanting to be voted 5 or 6 times whenever they shouldn't be voted only but once, or counted only but once, and they don't bring up dead uncles and dead sister-in-laws and dead this and dead that towards trying to bring them through the system. I just pray to God that the system can be regulated in a fair, open, democracy type form. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. Coming from the Windmill Ministries here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. Thanks again, and shalom.